You are the director, one of the director of the Frederick Douglass Foundation organization, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell the people about the Frederick Douglass organization, and then I have a question about it.
Okay, so the Frederick Douglass Foundation is a right. We're a right of center public policy and education organization. We promote the ideals of Frederick Douglass around entrepreneurship, education, and sensible regulations. We want to keep the legacy of Frederick Douglass alive. And, I'm sure your listeners know, but if you don't know who Frederick Douglass is, he is a major part of the reason slavery was abolished in this country. But he was also, in his words, a dyed in the wool Republican. And that's what we are about. We are about getting people, moving them over to the Republican Party. And as an organization, we also have a seat on the North Carolina Republican Party's Central Committee. So we are able to take the cares, concerns, and issues of the Black community directly, not just to the Republican Party, but also to the legislators in our legislature to help them advocate and do laws that benefit the Black community.
It's amazing the number of Black people who are not aware of Frederick Douglass. It's like they've kept him in the background in the same way they did with Walter Williams and other Black Republican leadership over time. It's amazing to me how they've been able to keep the Blacks from those people.
It is. And I think the more people come to the realization that Frederick Douglass was a Republican, all of the first Black U.S. House of Representatives and senators were all Republicans.
Yeah.
It was the Republican Party that voted for our right to vote, to give us full citizenship, on and on. You all know the spiel. But I think the Republican Party of today is starting to recognize that we have to be willing to walk in that history and be a part of that and be willing to go out and engage. And part of what my work has been able to do is we actually have more Black Republicans in party leadership in North Carolina than any other state in the country. And we're really proud of that fact.
Right on. I love the fact that you and Donald Trump go into the Black community. You go where they are and you hear their complaints. Whether you agree or not, at least you're there to listen to them, because in the past, the Republicans have refused to do that, except for Ronald Reagan. They have refused to do that. And I thought it was a big mistake not to go into the communities and listen to the folks.
Well, the one thing that I tell all of my Republican friends, Jesse, is if you stay in the echo chamber, the song never changes.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the difference between Martin Luther King Jr. and Frederick Douglass?
I think the difference is Martin Luther King. If Frederick Douglass was alive at the same time Martin Luther King was alive, I think they'd have shot Frederick Douglass first. Is I think what the difference is.
I agree.
And I think that Frederick Douglass was unapologetic.
Yeah.
I think that, and people need to recognize that you don't give the enemy a holiday. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm being very delicate about how I say this because I know they love Martin Luther King, right? I know they love him. But you have to think about this question, right? You have to put this into perspective. The question becomes, what did we get for all of that? For being able to go to the same store, there was a point, and if anybody studies history, we didn't care if white people had a store. We just built our own store.
Yeah.
We didn't care about the white doctor because we just got our own doctor. We talk about these Black Wall Streets across the country. So I think that the difference is that Frederick Douglass wanted us to be self-sufficient and wanted us to be a part of the American fabric without having to rely on anybody else. And Martin Luther King wanted people to force acceptance, if that makes sense. And some people would get mad when I say that. But the fact of the matter is, I think we've done more of a detriment because once that civil rights generation got their big houses, got their big cars, these are our grandparents we're talking about. Our community's not in the conditions it is on their own. So somebody dropped the ball, and I think the difference between the two was one was talking about self-sufficiency and one was talking about becoming more dependent and relying on the system, and I think that's the difference between the two.
That's amazing, man. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And it's unfortunate that, once again, the Blacks have been miseducated. and they're like into this civil rights movement issue, not knowing that they're being used and controlled by the so-called civil rights leaders. You're absolutely right about that. What a
Well, and that,
mess.
Jesse, the only other thing, if I might, on that is that we also have to recognize what agendas we got used for. I implore people, go look up Bayard Rustin. Go look up who was using the Black nonviolent movement to get their agenda across, and you'd be very surprised to see who it is.
What a mess. I hope you win, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
Wow, we need that. I want to ask about racism, then I have to put you on the hot seat here. Does racism exist?
In the hearts of people who believe it does. It's, outside of that, America is not a racist country. We are not a country that was founded in racism. I don't believe that for a single instance. The concept of race doesn't exist. There's no biological, definition for race that makes any sense. It's a cultural idea. No, man. People have stupid ideas.
Yeah,
Okay. People don't have the brightest of ideas. Now, if you want to call that racism, sure. But I think discrimination exists, but racism now.
absolutely. And even God said that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and wickedness, right? In high
Yes,
places.
sir.
And so our battle is not a physical battle, it's a spiritual battle. There are those who are on the side of good, and there are those who are on the side of evil, and they clash with one another because evil want to win and good want to win. And instead of calling what it is, they say, oh, it's racism, it's sexism, it's some type of ism, when it's really not ism, it's a spiritual issue.
There you go. Love it.
And your own family member, if they're not on the side of good and you are, they can turn against you as well. It doesn't
That's
matter.
true.
It's because it is a spiritual battle. I'm
Yes,
glad
sir.
you're out there saying that, man. That's amazing.
Yes, sir.